So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me get all the PowerPoints and whatnot ready to go.
Yeah. And just so anyone knows, if people do miss the front end of this, if you have a colleague or someone else joining that hasn't jumped on yet, we will be recording this and we'll make it available afterward.
Yes. Can you see the correct screen?
Yes. That doesn't mean you get to leave. You have to stick around and listen to us talk for a little while.
You do. Sorry. All right. So let's kick it off. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's webinar on our Tier 1 offering called Engage and Develop. I am Laura Hall. I am the head of marketing and customer experience here at Revigy, and we are here with Joe Monastiero, who is going to guide us through the why behind our new tiered approach, who is really a good fit for it, and then give you a quick demo. And hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but we always do like to keep the chat lively. And if you have questions as we go along, I thoroughly enjoy interrupting Joe's train of thought to ask them. So do let us know. We'd like to keep it interactive as possible. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Joe.
Thank you very much. And that's not just on webinars. That is in daily life of work that Laura likes to do that. So you guys will get to see it firsthand. But no, thank you all very much for joining today. This is a great session. Laura and I are very excited about this because we actually created the tiered approach and maturity model last year, early in the year, that we've been pushing out to a lot of prospects and customers. So it's going to be exciting to see what you all think and hear all of your questions. So essentially, there was a big question both internally and externally when we brought this up, and it was the why around a tiered approach. And there's a lot of different reasons in terms of what's happening in the market, the variables for enterprise sales, the variables for mid-market sales, commercial sales, those types of things. But really what it all boils down to is the holy grail for putting customers first is sell people only what they truly need, as you can see right here. So when we were speaking with prospects and our existing customers, what we found out is the configurable nature of Revigy lended them to want to use only what was necessary at the time. And our pricing model really wasn't structured that way. It was a little bit, you could use the account planning half or the opportunity execution half or both together. But when Laura and I looked at this and looked into the market, we understood that there is a serious need to match technology feature function with actual sales execution maturity, so that when you're bringing something into an organization, you can ensure success of both the program itself, as well as adoption of that program and platform. So that's really where the whole tiered approach came from and why we jumped into driving this forward. There you go. And this is our sales execution maturity model, which was the basis on which we set our tiered approach. So as you can see, you're going from ad hoc all the way to strategic. And if you look at that value line over the time, what that really is showing is as you begin to develop deeper maturity in terms of sales execution, and when we say maturity, it's really focusing on 3 sections, which you'll see next: people, process, and technology. You're going to drive a significant value out of that. And one of the kind of anecdotal pieces I can pull on is when we're looking at upping the performance of our sales teams. You can increase the performance of your A team members a little bit, right? And it's not usually going to yield more revenue or deeper wallet share for your clients because they're already on top of things. They understand the process, they understand how to articulate value and how to utilize methodologies and processes around the sales piece to make sure they are doing all of those best steps to ensure the closing of that. But when you look at your B players, there's a huge kind of swath of that middle section of performance that if you just increase that performance by 5%, that you can add 70+% of actual revenue to that middle group. And this is really where we're focused here. We want the biggest impact for the least amount of effort up front. Laura, was there anything else on the maturity model you wanted to talk through here? I know we're going to be exploring really the ad hoc and tactical pieces the most, and how that the engage and develop really is situated there. But even if you have a higher maturity in terms of your people and process, utilizing the Revigy technology at the baseline of our engage and develop tier can help you develop more discipline around that process and make sure that you're leveling up your technology to match those other maturity areas.
No, I think you did a great job covering it. I would also just add here too that, salespeople can be resistant to change and new technology or new processes. So sometimes starting small too is an easier way to kind of get them acclimated to trying to put some standardization around account planning. And you'll see that in here where we've broken it down more specifically into the people, process, and technology components that are necessary to make any program successful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when it comes to change management too, salespeople are coin operated, as we know, right? Or at least I am. I say that for most of the salespeople out there. But what that really boils down to is if you give me a task to complete and you say to me, this is going to help you to achieve a greater W-2, more commission, more wallet share on your clients, happier customers, whatever it may be, I need to see intrinsic value there. And by providing me a platform that is significantly heavy, and there's a lot to do in there, just in kind of that first look, I'm immediately going to shy away from that. But if you give me a stepped approach into the total value, and I'm getting incremental value along the way by doing simple steps. So in this case, with Engage and Develop, it's really focusing on your relationships and the tasks associated to developing those relationships. Doing those small pieces ends up creating tremendous value on the back end, creates much deeper understanding of the client, and in eventuality, higher pipeline and greater velocity of sales. So that's really kind of the focus there. But taking a step back from there, off of what Laura said, looking at this right here, you're seeing those three sections or three areas of maturity that we focused on: people, process, and technology. And if you look at the kind of lighter gray across the bottom of people, process, technology, you're going to see kind of the different elements we've broken this up into. So this is for us to utilize with our prospects and existing clients to internally understand where they sit for levels of maturity. And it gives us the ability to go in and recommend a specific portion of the Revegy platform or a very specific implementation process, right? So when are we going to phase in different features, different functionalities, and how are we going to ensure that you have the highest level of adoption? And looking at one of our recent customers, Comcast, this was paramount for them. We did a lot in understanding what their maturity was out of the gate. And as we put that adoption and success plan in place, we use something we call Revegy on Revegy training to speak to their end users and their managers to help them really create a foundation of understanding of what they need to do and where they need to go to reach their goal of 90+% adoption within the first 6 months. And I'm happy to say, with all of those factors in place, utilizing this as a baseline, we were able to reach that. They hit all of their goals ahead of schedule and have a very high level of adoption in the high 90 percentile right now, which is great. But so if you look here, as you can see on the left-hand side, you have your different stages of maturity. And again, across the right, you have all of the different answers that you could layer in here and what is correlated to those levels of maturity.
Yep. So then we're going to bounce over to, really the bread and butter for this tier one. Not that anybody couldn't come in and start small, but the top two, ad hoc and tactical, are where you should definitely start with a tier one with Revegy. We don't want to give you, have you bite off more than you can chew. So we'll talk a little bit here, Joe, about how you progress beyond ad hoc or tactical and the pieces that Revegy can help you drive.
Yes, absolutely. And really, as Laura said, right, if you're ad hoc and tactical, this is a great starting point to develop that discipline and rigor to move up through the stages. And where that really comes in is you can buy a process. You can buy the most strategic, highest maturity process that's out there, right? Spend millions of dollars on it. People do it all day with McKinsey, with Deloitte, with one of our partners, Mentor Group, all day. You can buy the right technology. You can purchase Revegy and put the entire enterprise platform in place and have the most strategic software stack, revenue software stack out there. But what you cannot purchase and what you cannot ensure is the maturity of your people who are executing that process, utilizing the technology to be that highest level of maturity. So where this all kind of comes into is that you need to consistently and constantly evaluate how your process is being utilized. If you need to evolve out any inefficiencies, how the technology enables you to follow or adhere to that process that you've purchased, you've paid for, you've evolved, and make sure that your people fully understand where those value elements are and how you're going to bring them forward. So if you look at this right here, so looking at sales managers enforcing adherence, enablement, focusing on training and adoption, that's from the people element there. That's really how you're going to move up through those levels and ensure that you have a standard process that is truly being followed to move from something that's ad hoc and it's once in a while, or tactical that it's understood but not really utilized, to the point where it's integrated, fully understood, and you have that repeatable process being used for onboarding of salespeople, for onboarding of customers through the sales cycle, the handoff process from marketing to sales to customer success, so on and so forth. That's really where you start moving into that integrated intelligence space. When you look at the process here, again, sales leadership and operations are partnering together to truly enforce and create a hyper-structured best practices sales process. Revigy enables you to do that in a lot of different ways, but the hard metrics of this are you want to know exactly what activities to do when, how you're going to articulate value, how you're going to visualize that value with your stakeholders during conversations, during presentations, etc. And then at the end of the day, how you're going to articulate that ROI and value to your senior level stakeholders that may not have been involved. So what is that executive summary going to look like? And how are you going to tie all of those details back together? And again, that's going to move you up through that. And having that process of governance across the board for that is really important there. And then finally, talking about the technology piece, obviously the revenue stack today is what is paramount and in focus for everyone. And that's a combination of your three teams, right? Your marketing teams, your sales teams, and your customer success teams. I really look at organizations today in two different sides of the same coin. You have your revenue team or your revenue capturing team, which is marketing, sales, and customer success. And you have your revenue enabling team or revenue supporting team, which are going to be your developers, your services, your support, product, etc. Those two teams working together in a single collaborative platform, critical to driving success across the entire organization. Laura, anything else on this that you want to mention before we jump in?
No, real quick, well, probably while we're diving into the demo too, had a quick question about what if your organization has some people that are on the more tactical or ad hoc side and some that are able to be more integrated? Can you come in at two different levels with Revigy?
I love that question. The answer is absolutely. And we're one of the first platforms, and we may be actually the only platform right now that I know of, to be able to do this. So we give our customers the ability to right size all aspects of Revigy. So there is a standardization, right? So your terminology is going to be the same. Your playbooks are going to be similar to each other. Your plans are going to be similar, but you can take that and say you have an enterprise level of the organization, a strategic level, and then all the way at the bottom, you have your commercial level, right? So you get your 5 to 10 account holders, you're really 50 to 100, and then your bottom, which could be thousands of accounts they hold. Obviously, each of those people coming into the platform are going to need to see different things right out of the gate to do two things. One, do not scare them off so they actually use the technology that you have. So that you're going to want to make sure they're understanding the exact rigor and discipline they need for their accounts. And two, you're going to give them the ability to plan and execute on those plans the right way for who they're speaking with. You wouldn't want to give a strategic account holder a commercial account plan. The same way you wouldn't want to give a commercial account holder an enterprise or strategic plan. It just is not correct in the way that they would want to carry out their business, the length of sales cycle, the discipline they need around collecting information, driving discovery, and showcasing value to their customers. It's a little bit different, but we can absolutely do that with playbooks, plans, etc. That's a little bit outside of what we're going to talk about today. The area that can be done with today is around your closed plans, which we'll talk about a little bit, as well as your templates for your maps. So we'll jump into that. And when we jump into the demo, I'll talk through those elements there.
Yeah, let's dive in. That's it for the PowerPoint.
Laura, if you could
stop sharing so you can.
Just make sure I share the right thing here. It's always a challenge on these times. All right, can you all see my screen?
Looks like it is working well.
Perfect. Okay. So what we're looking at right out of the gate here is going to be the relationship map. Now, when we say engage and develop, our focal point here is on your critical stakeholders or your stakeholders in general for your accounts and opportunities. One of the things I want to point out is what we did with the tiered approach is remove the barrier between accounts and opportunities. So when you purchase engage and develop from Revigy, you're getting the relationship mapping capability on the account side, as well as the influence mapping capability on the opportunity side. Main difference between those two is what we're measuring or visualizing there. Accounts, you're visualizing the strength of your relationship in the colors. As you can see here, you have gray, which indicates no relationship yet or no information, green indicating a strong relationship, amber indicating a mid-level or moderate level of relationship, and the red indicating a bad or weak relationship there. On the opportunity side of the house, you'd be looking at this in terms of simple terms. Who's voting for me? Who's voting against me? So you very quickly open that up as a manager, individual contributor, or an executive, and you can say, in this case, all right, I need to get some more people voting for me if I'm going to win this, because you have your senior stakeholders that either are undecided or have influence, as you can see right here through this influence line, from those who are against us. So it's really the biggest piece. Now I'm going to double tap down into this to open up a couple of things here and to begin to edit this. Out of the gate, I want to talk a little bit about templates. So with our engage and develop piece of the platform, you can create relationship map templates. What we suggest here is you take your top 10, 15, 20 stakeholders that you know you need to know in your strategic accounts, commercial accounts, enterprise accounts, whatever accounts, your type of accounts you're planning, you want those templatized. What you're going to do from an individual contributor perspective, you're going to jump in. You're not looking at a blank screen. You're looking at a template that shows your titles of the key stakeholders you need. As soon as you turn Revigy on, it's going to immediately reach out to your CRM because we are bi-directionally integrated. As you can see here, I have all of my CRM contacts listed. It's going to take a look in CRM and look for that title. So right here, we have VP of EMEA Sales. As you can see, we have a little group icon right here, and then the recommended match right here. So if I were to click on that group icon, what's going to pop up is the suggested match as well as all of the other contacts on the account. So this is a great feature. It becomes a validation effort for your individual contributors rather than a build from scratch exercise, which, as we all know, it's tough to get salespeople to fill out expense reports sometimes to give them money. So giving them a blank screen, you're not always going to get that result. It's going to feel like homework in a lot of cases. So we're doing all we can to stop that from happening. Quickest way to do this, all you would do is come in, you click the approve check mark right there, and now that's locked in. Another great use for this is actually identification of blind spots. So as you can see, I have another over here. It's the VP of Finance. There's 0 recommendations for this or suggestions. So what this is going to tell us is, okay, I don't know who this VP of Finance is. I don't have them in CRM. You can even pull up that grouping again and double check through this to see, all right, is there another title that I may be looking for? VP of Procurement, CFO, whatever that may be that you're pulling in. And if that's not the case, you now immediately know this is a blind spot for you. You need to go out to Zoom Info, LinkedIn, do your research, wherever it may be, and pull that contact in. Now, as soon as you were to add that to the CRM, if you're exporting it from any of those tools, it is immediately going to be populated here as now an option or a suggestion for that piece. Behind these cards, we have a significant amount of detail that enhances your view far beyond CRM. As you can see here, we have role, which is going to give you what their role is in the business, obviously, the level. So this is C level, but you have VP, director, manager, etc. These items are configurable lightly to match what you have for terminology internally and reduce that change management element of putting a new platform in place. You also have preference, and if they were to prefer an alternative, as you can see, you actually have the ability to key in who that alternative player is, so you know right out of the gate. Relationship, who the owner of this is internally on your account team, level of influence they have, and then a notes section. Here we have engagement plan, which is going to give you the ability just to key in a couple of notes of what you're planning on doing or why you may be engaging this person. Also could be political affiliations or alignments internal to their organization, personal motivations, things like that. Anything I personally would put here would be to help me have a better or deeper conversation with that stakeholder and make sure I understand what they're thinking. I'm going to jump to the back end of this and then work my way in. Again, another comment section here. This doesn't have to exist. This is configurable here. This is just to throw in some comments. And as you can see, we have Amanda Watson being a third-party consultant, heavily influencing, as you can see here, Jordan Ashley. So we wanted to notate that. The general element here is just going to be what is pulled from your CRM. This is integrated to Salesforce right now. We also have a bi-directional integration with Dynamics and SAP's CX Cloud or Cloud for Customer, whichever version of that you're on, we can handle. And any of this detail that's changed due to that bi-directional integration, it will push right back to CRM and notate that. Now, one of the good things here, if you do have a reports to field in your CRM, whether it's standard or custom object, you can absolutely pull that in and it will help to display more information. One last piece on this, if it is a contact you do not want in CRM, so prior colleague, personal friend, whoever it may be, you can also choose to have this be an external contact. So they will live inside of the Revigy platform. It will not be exposed to your CRM. You will not have to worry about marketing, running off and sending them a whole bunch of content or anything like that. Laura's smiling over here.
Marketing always out of control.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. And you can still visualize that they are a player for this. As we jump to the activity section here, anywhere that you are creating a relationship development plan or trying to execute, whether it's in an opportunity or on the account level, activities with this person as the customer contact, all that's going to show here. And it's going to be very nicely organized. As you can see, the JA Corporation is the account. Here are all the tasks that are associated, if they're in progress, not started, etc. And we have one opportunity that Jordan Ashley is associated with, and that is going to be the movie division, and the IT approval is what she's associated with for the close plan there. Super straightforward here. It's nice because you have all of the information that is existing about this person, the activities they're doing, the maps they're involved in, etc. We'll be able to grab that forward. And it looks like we have a question. What are the connections to platform that has other solutions like LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, or Contacts at Salesforce? So right now, so this is a question around what other systems are integrated here for contact information. So as it stands now, with ZoomInfo and LinkedIn, working toward those direct integrations. However, because those are so heavily integrated to your CRM, you don't even have to worry about that integration piece directly to Revigy. Any update in contact information or pull of new contacts from ZoomInfo, from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, going into your CRM are immediately going to be available and visible within Revigy. And what we're working on right now to release in February and May is an in-app notifications engine that is going to give you visibility into any changes with those stakeholders. So say ZoomInfo, which updates for the most part nightly, comes in and updates Jordan Ashley in this case, and says that she is no longer the CEO, but she is a CEO of a different company. It's going to notify you that there's been a change there. It's going to drive you directly to that relationship card or contact card, and it's going to display what that change is. So you're immediately aware of it in email and in application for Revigy. But we are working on some more of those integrations to display that information more relevant right into Revigy. So the last piece here, if it's going to cooperate, which it's slowed down a little bit, don't do that to me. There we go, is the Insights tab. And this is where, again, you're pulling the information from around the Revigy platform, the account maps, the relationship strategy maps, etc., all the activities, as well as on the opportunity side, the influence maps and the business value maps there. So each of these is going to be a different map as you see the coloration here. And again, it is organized in terms of this being an ad services opportunity, this being the corporate map, this being the relationship map for the corporation, that type of thing. So any map you have them associated with will be here. Biggest piece of power behind this. You can see based on the relationship maps, how they feel about your organization as a whole and how they feel about you in each opportunity that you're fighting in. As you scroll down, you're also going to be able to see the goals that they're associated with. In this case, Jordan Ashley, what her goals are to improve customer satisfaction, increase profitability percentages here, and then the specific outcomes or challenges that they're facing. So now you've moved from identifying your stakeholders, understanding what they care about, to being able to put together a specific, not just buyer persona, but stakeholder-based marketing and sales plan right from the Revigy platform with no more effort than what you normally would take to develop this information. Laura,
Just jump in. Great minds. Just from a marketing perspective too, I know account-based marketing, account-based everything is the buzzword right now, but it's truly something that we've been doing for a long time. We've all been trying to attack key accounts together in order to win and grow more business. So this is something really useful for your marketing people to be able to come in here and understand without having to wrangle salespeople, because they're difficult, Joe, and get some of the information that they need as they're going into their planning process. So just something to keep in the back of your mind there, and you'll see some hopefully marketing integrations coming towards the end of the year. Don't tell product I said that.
No, you're not supposed to say. That's usually my job to say things I'm not supposed to.
No, there's a lot of interconnectivity here too. So we're constantly thinking about how to make this more and more effective to bring all of those revenue generating teams together.
And actually, Javier asked another great question. It was a follow-up to his initial with the integration of Sales Navigator, Salesforce, Sales Navigator and LinkedIn. How are we seeing this being implemented across complex corporations, conglomerates, etc.? Actually, this is phenomenal because one of our first test cases for this was utilization of the engage and develop piece of our platform within Infor, which, as anyone may know, large multi-billion-dollar corporation, multinational offices all across the world. We actually stood them up and they grew from roughly 200 users on the initial pilot of this to 600 users inside of 6 months, and really drove that forward for us. And they're utilizing it in a lot of different ways. So the first way is, one, to take away from the administrative time that was being done and manually creating PowerPoint-based relationship maps, because there's no way to easily edit those, no way to really add attributes behind the scenes. But the other was, it's taking a ton of time away from managers when they go into these coaching conversations. Oh, and that's actually perfect because there's another question out there in terms of coaching. So this is being utilized to remove the first half of a coaching conversation. If you go in and you're normally going to be a coach or an executive that's mentoring on a deal, first 30 minutes of an hour-long conversation is trying to understand who the key players are, how they're thinking about us, and how we're thinking about them. What Revigy gives you the capability to do, if it's being utilized properly, you don't have to worry about that first 30 minutes. You get to jump right into the actual coaching and mentoring on a deal because you're visually understanding. If we just swipe this off real quick, we're visually understanding exactly who these key players are, what the organizational structure is, but also what the influence structure is as well. And you can very quickly, during this coaching session, go ahead and pull up the second part of the engage and develop piece, which, as you can see, I click the little toolbar over here and I have a bunch of different options I could choose. We're not going to worry about the majority of these. They're focused on the different portions of Revigy, which we'll get into in our next webinars here. But we're just going to go ahead and grab our goals, objectives, and actions, or as I like to call it, our execution plan, our development plan, whatever it may be. This is the develop portion of engage and develop. As you can see right here, I'm going to focus just on the relationship goals. And what we can do is jump right in here and say, you know what, I need to develop more C-level relationships. As you can see, I have a few different tasks in here. I can quickly add a task in when I'm having my coaching conversation, if I'm just doing my own research here, and I can say, develop backup relationship to Jordan Ashley. Ashley with, we'll say, just in this case, right, the COO. So just taking into consideration that that COO holds a similar amount of influence and is positive with us. Now you can assign that out to a specific member of your team. You can put a start date, due date in there. We're just going to show this is in progress and it's actually going to be due the 30th. Add some comments, the priority, and then this is where that contact piece comes in. So this isn't going to be associated to anyone right now because we don't know who that person is. But if we did have a COO in here, we would scroll through here or just type in COO. Yeah, see, they're not going to pop up, right? But we just type in COO, add that person in, and we'd be good to go. And then we're going to save this. And now that becomes another activity that's associated to our execution plan about developing C-level relationships. Super cut and dry, very simple to do. These tasks also integrate to your CRM. So you're going to get these pushed, in this case, to Salesforce. So what you're doing for reporting in that regard is still going to be populated with all of the key information. Now, in terms of best practices, this is just my suggestion, but we can do it really any way you would like. I always suggest to our clients that you want to push all of the tasks and activities from Revigy to the CRM. But I don't like to pull those activities back into Revigy from the CRM because I want to separate the tactical and strategic. CRM tends to be significantly more tactical, right? You're looking at your emails, your meetings, your phone calls, etc. And there can be hundreds of those on any opportunity and potentially thousands on any account, especially if it's a longer term sales cycle. Whereas Revigy is focused on what are the strategic steps you're going to take on the account to develop deeper wallet share or better relationships or more revenue opportunities, or in our case, we call them revenue growth ideas or RGIs. And on the opportunity side, what are you going to do to win this deal? What are the steps you need to take to close it? What are the steps you need to take to hand it off to the proper internal people? And what are really the steps you need to take to win the deal? Those are, again, strategic elements that we may not want to conflate with your tactical. So just a suggestion point there. Again, we do see it both ways. I'd say it's about, and Laura, keep me honest on this, it's probably about a 60-40 split. with 60% doing it just showcasing strategic and Revegie rather than the other, and 40% pulling all activities into the Revegie platform as well.
Yeah, that's probably right. And we have some comments in the chat here too, but that highlight a point I was kind of thinking of in my head too, was this is really useful for people that, sales has a high turnover by nature, especially right now we're dealing with the Great Resignation. And oftentimes this type of information lives in a salesperson's head or on a note next to their desk or in their remarkable tablet somewhere. So this really helps to eliminate that loss of knowledge transfer if somebody does leave the organization, if somebody has to go out on medical leave, maternity leave. It really helps keep everybody on the same page so that the team can better collaborate. And help pick up any slack and collaborate, even if somebody's not out throughout the buying process, to ensure that no steps are missed.
Absolutely agree.
Got another question in here too from Cheryl. Can you upload all your goals at one time during implementation, or does it require manual adding of each goal?
Yep, that's a great question. So in the execution plans, the goals, objectives, and actions, traditionally that is going to be a building exercise. So as you're developing a deeper knowledge of the account, of the stakeholders, the various potential initiatives they have, that type of thing, you develop that execution plan. Now you can templatize some of that and do it up front, and that tends to be a case-by-case basis, but we do put together a very kind of comprehensive statement of work and take into consideration all of the configurations you need to make. So that's really where our services and sales teams work hand in hand to scope that out and make sure you're happy. So short answer is yes, you can do that. Longer answer is you're not necessarily going to want to do it for everything, but we can start with something there. So we have another question that asks, does engage and develop include playbooks and plans? So the answer to that is no. So this is just specific to the execution plan or your goals, objectives, and actions on the account side. And then we can do goals, objectives, and actions on the opportunity side, but it tends to be more focused on your close plan there or your handoff plan. That stage 2 or tier 2, which is strategize and execute, that's where the plans and playbooks come into play, because there tends to be, or at least in our mind for the tiered approach, a deeper discipline around, one, doing the exercise of putting relationship maps in place and developing that execution plan, and two, an understanding of where the value is coming from. So when you move to stepping through a guided selling playbook or stepping through a guided account planning playbook, you're going to know that that person already understands why they're doing this and where the importance is, and they're going to have the rigor and discipline behind it to execute and adhere to that process.
And just so you all know, if you have questions about the other packages, we will be doing a next step in this series of webinars on the next package. But if you want more information now, I just dropped a link in the chat to our pricing and packaging page, just so you could familiarize yourself.
So just taking a look at this real quick, if you were paying attention, I jumped just very quickly into an opportunity associated with JA Corporation. This one is JA Movie Division Enterprise Solution. So here we are looking at what we call an influence map on the opportunity side of the house. As you can see, similar people on here, same account, right? But the colors look a little bit different. Here we're again focused on the who's voting for or against me. So if we're looking at this real quick as a manager, frontline manager and executive, clearly we're not winning this deal. We do have some support in here, but it tends to be at the lower levels. And our critical stakeholder, which is going to be Jordan Ashley, she is the decision maker here, and the CRO, who is also a decision maker. Both of them are either not feeling the products that we're pitching them or the company itself, or have a neutral opinion of it. So we have to do a lot of work here. And again, that's really where the insight section behind the relationship card comes into play. So you'd be able to jump very quickly into here, say, look, I understand she's the decision maker. I want to see really what's going on in her head. You just grab that insights tab, and as you can see, it's the same as we saw it on the account side, and you start to develop that plan of attack, taking a look at what her preference is, the level of relationship we have. And don't worry, you'll never have to learn these shorthands. These always pop up. It's just easier to color code it and show it this way. So you jump in and you see all these details here. So then you can put that plan together to make sure that you're doing things properly. Now, so the relationship map here is pretty quick and easy to show. It's the same as on the other side, but what I do want to show you is the close plan. Now, when we jump into plans here, you will have a plan element with the engage and develop side of things on the opportunity, but it is only to house the close plan here. So I'm just going to very quickly grab the 2021 opportunity plan, which we just showed. So we're going to jump into the close activities here. Now, as you can see, you have your joint evaluation plan. So this is going to be the core element on the opportunity side. You could also have goals, objectives, and actions, as you saw on the account side of the house. That's just an additional element that we configure for you and add into this section here. So in this close plan, we call it a joint evaluation plan, close plan, etc. So you have a list of all different activities that can be completed. Now, the great thing with this, there's two ways you can do it. You can either leave it blank and have people fill it in as they go, or with most organizations, when you have a actual sales methodology or sales process in play, you know what your steps to close are going to be. So you can have a quick pick list where you can choose multiple elements or add them all and add additional pieces in here too. Very easy to do. You just add new, it's going to pop up in there. And you're, again, similar to a task, right? You're going to add all of this information in, save it, and it's going to be added into this line, either as in progress, not started, completed, or past due. Another great piece with this right here can actually be turned into a Gantt chart, which let's just cancel out of this real quick. I don't want to save any of that. We're going to show you a chart. So you can actually see the closing steps that need to happen and validate this against what the close date is in CRM. So again, from a coaching and mentoring perspective, this becomes extremely helpful as a quick validation. Are my salespeople doing the right things? Do they have expectations set properly based on the steps we know have to happen before closing? So for instance, if this was going to be a December close, clearly here, I'm sorry, a November close, clearly we have steps that are pushed into December. So either the salesperson has happy ears over here and they're not doing the right thing, or there are some acceleration steps that can take place to do some of these things in parallel and bring this to a close prior to the expectation, which is the end of December here. So that's really the majority of what we have to show you today in terms of the platform. But what I want to do is save some time for questions now. Does anyone have any questions about the relationship mapping capabilities here, the goals, objectives, and actions, or GOA, as we call it, or the close plan?
We have a few questions in the queue already. One great question for global organizations: does the platform support multi-language?
Yes, it does. So we are able to support multi-language. We are also able to support character languages like kanji. So we do have some Japanese clients of ours that we've translated painstakingly translated early on the entire platform into the kanji language, thanks to one of our phenomenal service team members over here. But yeah, we do have that capability to adjust.
And then next question is, I love this question. It's, I think, underutilized. Is this something that you might collaborate on with your prospect? And do any of your customers actually share this plan with the customer or prospect?
I love that I was waiting for this question. So I'm so happy this got asked. I was going to talk about it, but I was hoping someone would ask it first. So absolutely. We actually recommend that even if you're using enterprise Revgy, the major portions of the platform, which are going to be your relationship mapping, your revenue growth ideas, your white space, it's going to be your strategy mapping. We suggest, now granted, it's dependent on what your relationship was with the client, but we suggest you utilize at minimum the maps with them to drive discovery conversations, to drive stakeholder conversations, and really help them understand that you've done your research. You are acting as a trusted advisor, and you're utilizing that effort to further the conversation and not just keeping it to yourself. And when you go to export, say you have the full-blown enterprise Revgy and you have an account plan or an opportunity plan in place, you can export all of the elements of that plan into PowerPoint or PDF. So our suggestion is to actually create a button that's customer facing, and you can choose those different elements inside of that plan and export a customer facing deal review, executive summary, account review, etc. So you can work on that with the client right there. But we do it both live in the platform and in PDF format when we speak to our clients.
And this is so important too. If you guys have been following along with any of the research that analysts like Forrester and Gartner are doing, they've really been talking a lot about buying groups. And we've seen, especially since 2020 and everything that's happened in the last 2 years, those buying groups have expanded to include additional people. You know, in our case, we see finance enter deals much more often than we did before. So if you're able to share these maps with your champion, they can help you figure out what you have to navigate. The two of you together have to figure out what you have to navigate within the organization and put a game plan together so that you're actually able to do a better job of helping your buyer buy through this process.
completely agree. I mean, and that's something that we've looked at. We found that, last year especially, the buying process has significantly changed for the majority of our prospects. And really the majority of industries out there, it's changed pretty rapidly. You have a lot more people that are involved in any buying decisions. You have significantly more portions of the organization involved than ever before. And it's almost as if you're selling to an entire C-level panel as opposed to just marketing, just sales, just IT. So it's really interesting. And utilizing the Revigy platform to display that information right in those meetings has been extremely helpful to doing two things. One, understanding really what that stakeholder landscape looks like, and two, level setting on what all of your close activities are. We just did this with, took this with one of our clients last week and level set exactly what every step of the process was, what could be done in parallel, what had dependencies, and we're able to go from a date that they wanted full implementation to be done, all the way back to what we need to do this current week to make sure we can enable that. So it's really great. And you can have those conversations throughout the sales process to make sure that you're consistently and constantly validating that those steps are being completed and that nothing's shifted. So there's no surprises at the end. And as we all know, at the 11th hour, end of the quarter, end of the year, it's when all the fun things come out. All those excuses of, oh, sorry, I have to get this person to sign it, but they're out for 3 weeks, as we see with a lot of our European clients. You run into a lot of vacations at the end of the year. And then in the US, same type of thing. You have Christmas and New Year's, you have Thanksgiving, you run into those holidays and it creates issues. Now, if you can mitigate that ahead of time, you're in really good shape.
Yep. Another question here. Great question. What are some of the things that you look for as indicators that make organizations successful with account planning or sales execution? And gave some examples here: end user training, management buy-in, et cetera.
Those are two great places to start. So the end user training and end user visibility, one of the biggest pieces to make people successful. Now, there's a caveat here. The training cannot just be button pushing training. If you train people that you have to push these 5 buttons to create a relationship map, or these 10 buttons over here to create, an engagement plan or a GOA, et cetera, that's not really going to be helpful. What is going to be helpful is training on the value of pushing those buttons and utilizing that platform. What are the outcomes that you're looking for? How are you going to drive toward that outcome? Increase your pipeline, increase your visibility to your stakeholders, increase the likelihood to win a deal or the velocity of that deal. Those are really the key elements there. And you touched on another great one too: buy-in from management, from the executives to the second line managers, to the first line managers, to the end users. Everyone has a different responsibility to perpetuate a new program or use of a new platform in the organization. If you can identify that early on, and in our case, you do that with our customer success team for your adoption planning and your success planning, make sure that those individuals understand what their responsibilities are, then you will be in a phenomenal position. And it's really an interesting balancing act between the, quote unquote, carrot and stick mentalities that a lot of people have. Can't be too much stick, can't be too much carrot. It really has to be a give and take. And one of the greatest ways we've seen this be successful is with the providing of coaching, deal coaching or deal mentoring, with the use of Revigy as your baseline. So unless you've completed your relationship maps, your close plans, your strategy maps or business value maps, you do not have access to that level of coaching or mentoring that you would need to bring things over the line much faster. Oracle's done that in the past. I know Infor's done that in the past, Siemens, Fujitsu, et cetera. They utilize that in a lot of their sales processes to make sure that there's adherence to the process and success with the program.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too, actually something that our stakeholder, fantastic customer from Siemens, said to us, and during our last customer roundtable, was he was talking about what Revigy enabled in their organization, and the people and the process pieces are very important, but you have to have a way to help people collaborate and make it come alive. And he said, before Revigy, account planning was a presentation, and with Revigy, it becomes a process. People need to recognize the difference, especially the sales orchestrators, which is what they call their account managers. But it's very important. It can't just be a single presentation. I'm going to check this box every quarter because my boss makes me do it. So that's back to where those coaching conversations become so important, because you're using it as a basis of every discussion you have, and it really becomes ingrained into the organization. And that's the way to be successful with any technology.
Yep, totally agree.
Cool. Speaking of compliance, we had another question too about how does this drive CRM usage, compliance, adoption, et cetera?
That's a great question. So there's two schools of thought on this. One, a lot of it's actually about, I would say the majority of our customers like to see Revigy embedded into their CRM. So now with our bidirectional integration to Dynamics, C4C, and Salesforce, that's really easy to do. You already have the flow of information going back and forth, and we simply iframe Revigy into your CRM. So it inherits the permissions, you have accessibility to the accounts and opportunities that you see, and the executives can either access it through the CRM or access it in standalone mode as you're seeing here. Biggest difference between that is this little navigation on the left-hand side right here. This is only going to exist in standalone, but you're going to have visibility to the entirety of functionality and features in Revigy on your CRM if you were to go embedded. The other way of doing this is to go fully standalone. Now, that is beneficial for those that are seeing low adoption of CRM and don't really care about it as much. And I know that's interesting to say because everyone cares about CRM adoption, obviously. But when you're looking at a system or a platform that good is 25% adoption, it's one of those things you're splitting hairs as to whether or not it's going to make you more successful with your account planning opportunity or execution or guided selling approaches or programs, or if it's going to hinder that progress. So that's something we really talk through with your teams, both on the IT, operations, enablement, and sales side, to make sure we understand what the current state is in your organization today and how we can do one of two things: either help to make you more successful with your CRM usage and adoption, or ensure that despite that, not so great adoption or utilization, you will still have success with your program of Revigy.
And then another question, I would like to know who this anonymous attendee is because you're getting an A+ with the fantastic questions you're asking. You said that it takes account planning from a presentation into a collaborative session. Have you seen Revigy used as a means to drive productive QBRs, both internally and customer facing? I'd like to speak to that just real quick too, because I just got off of an internal account review where we did the entire review out of Revigy. So it really helps to, doesn't waste time on us having to make yet another PowerPoint. I know we all love making PowerPoints, but, and two, even though I'm having coaching conversations with Joe, for example, and he and I are using Revigy as our source of truth, I'm not always having conversations with our CTO or other stakeholders that might only jump in and out for a QBR. So it helps make sure that everybody has the same information, and again, gives us a basis to start our discussion and turns it into a collaborative discussion process rather than, okay, let me go into presentation mode and everybody, sit here and try to pay attention as I scroll through slides. Joe, I'm sure you've seen more of this out in the field too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We do it internally. So my first QBR with Revigy, we did not at that point use Revigy as the internal QBR mechanism. And it wasn't because it wasn't available to do or available to use. It was just the preference of the sales leader at that time, which was not me, was to do it outside of that and do it more in a traditional QBR format. Go off, make your PowerPoints, come back, we'll talk about it. And it really becomes more of a finger pointing or kind of an information hunt than a collaborative QBR that drives follow-up and success. What we have done since then, and since I had taken over as the head of sales, is do all of our QBRs within Revigy. So what that means is I can very quickly pull up any relationship map, strategy map, et cetera, of the accounts and opportunities and see exactly what point we're at with that. I can see the stages. Now, if I just pull up a quick playbook over here, I can show you this real quick. And I know this isn't in our engage and develop, but I want to showcase this. So I can pull up a guided selling playbook right now. I can understand where this opportunity sits from a CRM stage perspective, which is that purple pin. I can see what activities have been completed through that guided selling process and where this should be. Now, as you can see, we have our verifiable outcomes in here. We have our specific activities. All of our Revigy tools are attached here. So all of it's at my fingertips. So right from here, I can just go ahead and say, oh, I need to grab the opportunity influence map. I want to take a look at this and I want to understand Chris or Laura or whomever, who we're talking to and what they feel like. All right, we did that. Now, you know what? Great, I see that we have some poor relationships here. I'm going to go ahead, we're going to grab your sequence of events here. And I'm going to go ahead and say that we need to add a new task in here to develop a relationship or a plan with Amanda Watson, who seems to have a significant amount of influence over the CEO here. As you can see, in 3 simple clicks, I went from the playbook to the relationship map, talked about that real quick, and then jumped right into creating a follow-up action on that close plan. So we know this is the highest priority action for this opportunity to make sure that we're set in a direction that we can win. Super cut and dry and easy here to do, but really, really great thing.
Yeah, that's another, I mean, great thing too, is that you can edit it live. So, traditionally in a QBR, you'd be working out of a PowerPoint, you'd be in presentation mode, and then also while presenting, trying to take notes on any input that the other people involved in the QBR would have. Here, I can just, if I, say somebody on my relationship map is Gray and I'm doing a QBR with Joe, he can say, oh no, wait, I do know Tom Smith. And I can go make a note there and we can have a plan of action to get that guy from Gray to green.
Yeah, it really turns QBRs into what they're supposed to be. Coaching successions for growth and success, as opposed to, I used to call it, or I do call it still to customers, the quarterly failure, because ultimately it turns into a finger pointing exercise and nothing gets done. And as a sales rep in the past, I would pick it up. I'd put all the effort in for a week or two, especially on the annual reviews. After that was done, I would put it down until the next time I had to go do a review, and I would never update it, work off it, or anything. Now you have an evergreen digital platform that allows you to continually document all of your steps forward, all of your stages, all of your progress, etc., and look at that for progression, as opposed to having to pick up something static. Really great way to do it. So as far as our customers, this always comes down to the faster horse versus the car situation, right? That conversation always comes up. If someone's looking for a faster horse, they can do that here. They can get all of their adherence to their program, to their process, methodologies, etc., operationalized in Revigi, run all of that. You're going to see success. You're going to see progress, right? That's there. And when you want to do the traditional QBR, you can export all of that information into a PowerPoint, into a PDF, and run them how you normally would. Those are the people that are looking for the faster horse. The ones that understand that there needs to be a true transition from the static way of doing QBRs, account reviews, customer-facing reviews, executive summaries, etc., into the new world of digitizing that, we can actually deploy the car for you as well. So you can run all of this within Revigi, and we see that happening on a regular basis. I would say this is something that's a little bit slower to progress in the market just because of the tradition of the way things are done. There's probably about 30 to 40% of our clients that are using Revigi to run their QBRs, their executive summaries, and their customer conversations. And I'd say, 60 to 70% are still doing it the old way. Laura, would you agree with that kind of assessment of people?
I'm on mute. Oh, I did so well. If you're doing it based on users, I would say that actually more people, because we do have some, large companies with thousands of users on the platform that are all moving in lockstep and doing things the same way. So, but yeah, it's just, I mean, you see all the stats all the time about the amount of administrative time that salespeople spend versus selling. This is yet another thing to just help take another step out. You're already keeping up with this. Why would you, go and recreate something in the PowerPoint template or in a Word doc instead? And we do have another question. I love this one too. Forecast accuracy is an issue for our organization. I think it is for all organizations, so don't feel bad. How do you or your customers leverage opportunity planning to drive more accurate forecast? We tend to see end of quarter surprises. Not the fun kind of surprises.
No. I just don't like surprises overall because I've been in sales for so long. It's just trained me to hate all surprises because they're usually not great in sales. So the way to do that is to utilize the close plan that we had originally talked about, right? You're going to utilize a relationship map here as well. You want to identify all of your key stakeholders and their influence that they have on the opportunity itself. So who's making the decision, who's approving it, who's influencing it. Those are really the key ones, right? And then your economic buyer, who is literally signing that check or cutting that check to make sure this gets through. And what we've seen as a phenomenon over the last 2 years is a real interesting thing. Even though you have, say, a CRO, a chief revenue officer, or even a chief operations, CTO, CIO, et cetera, they own the budget. The procurement or financial group can come in at any time and pull that. So it's very important to identify that person. I'd say that above all else would be my number one suggestion, is to make sure you have that person identified, you know who they are, and you've spoken to them to avoid those surprises. But to do it in kind of a broader sense, utilize the close plans. You know what your 10, 15 steps are from inception of a true qualified opportunity all the way to that close point. utilize that, templatize those, and make sure they're being done. And if they aren't being done, there better be a damn good reason why that's been skipped, because you can validate what has been done and what's not. So it's really taking that prepared, repeatable process view and applying that to the steps to close, not just the activities of your sales cycle, but the physical steps that need to be executed to make sure it's closed. Now, I mean, IT review, legal review, security review, ROI and value conversations, articulation to procurement of the specific ROI here, making sure you've identified all your key stakeholders, making sure they're all aware and aligned. And now with the buying group piece, making sure that you have, this is really interesting, right? You have touched on each of the individual needs and outcomes that are in that buying group, right? Because you end up with a cross-functional team. But above that, making sure that you have pulled the thread across all of those buying group members for one or two critically important values or ROIs. And if you can get that commonality between the group and get agreement on those one or two different values, that's where you're going to see greater success. And that's where you're going to offset any of these last minute surprises that typically come up.
And that's, again, better coaching conversations, right? Well-informed, making sure that you're all working from the same source of truth. And you can understand if I come in here and the CFO is gray and I'm predicting this to close this quarter, how is that going to happen? This quarter has 2 months left in it and you have to get all the way through finance. Are you sure it's going to close this quarter? So it gives you some of those checks and balances in there.
Absolutely.
We are coming towards the end of our time here. Joe, you have a meeting in 1 minute, just so you know.
Yes, I do.
We have an unanswered question in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We'll send you a follow-up email with the recording. And you can just reply directly to that email and we'll get right back to you. So thank you all for coming today, and we hope to stay in touch.
Thank you guys so much. We'll talk soon, and get ready for tier 2 of this, which is strategize and execute. It'd be nice if I said my own tier. Right?
Strategy and execution.
Yeah, there we go. That's going to involve a little bit more depth here. You're going to get into the strategy maps, the business value maps, the revenue growth ideas, and start taking a look at how we're going to develop not just a relationship plan, but also an execution plan with initiatives and strategies in mind. Thank you guys all. Have a great day.